everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and the Minnesota Vikings have wrapped up their 11th day of training camp, and this being the first day that Kyler Murray was the starting quarterback officially of the Minnesota Vikings. So here's what I want to do. I want to run through his practice today. I also have a bunch of other notes that have to do with not Kyler Murray. Two quotes that stuck out to me the most from the press conferences of Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray, and then your questions and comments and thoughts. And already I see sane questions in the comment section, so we're going to hope for more of that, and we can have a good conversation, not only about the quarterback, but anything else that's on your mind. Now that that is resolved, opens up for a lot more watching of the other players and talking about that, and I was able to spend some time focusing on some other dudes today, but I did not change how I am covering this practice, at least from the quarterback position, because we still have a quarterback grid. Now, I only made one for Kyler Murray, but I will continue to track Kyler Murray's passes and success, including, and I'm really looking forward to, in the joint practices, of which we are not that far away from now. We have a preseason game coming up, and then the week after that, we have those joint practices, and then off we go into the regular season. So here's what happened with Kyler Murray today. I would say that his first practice as the starting quarterback was a pretty enormous success. You're not going to find too many on the incompletion side of things. He had 2 deep balls today that were particularly impressive down the sideline. I'll go through those in the highlights, but he went 2 for 3 throwing the ball deep. He went 2 for 2 on the intermediate areas between 10 and 19 yards. So overall 4 for 5 when pushing the ball downfield, with only one negative play, which was an overthrow. And then the short stuff, the football did not hit the ground for Kyler Murray. He threw a total of 9 passes underneath 10 yards. Bang, 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 bang. None of them spectacular in any way. They were routine, but he hit every single one of them. It was a really, really strong practice for Kyler Murray from a timing perspective, from an accuracy perspective. And, maybe we get the results and then reconstruct the narrative that there was a weight lifted off of Kyler Murray. Maybe that wasn't it. Maybe he always would have had this practice, regardless if he was still competing with JJ McCarthy or not. But, now that you see the results and after watching the practice, you go, all right, was he feeling relieved maybe and a lot more comfortable today, or did things just kind of work out today? Not really sure which one of those two things it was, but when you go 13 for 14 in practice, even if it is a good number of underneath passes, but there were 5 that traveled over 10 yards, you're going to feel pretty darn good about the first impression that you leave as officially the starting quarterback. So that was Kyler Murray's day. And in terms of his highlights, yeah, the 13 for 14 passing, really impressive, but he had one of the best throws that he's made of all of training camp so far, where he dropped back, rolled out, and then found Jordan Addison on a deep kind of crossing or corner route. I'm not exactly sure where he was coming from, but it seemed like he was coming from across the field, and the ball was laid out in front of him. Talk about the accuracy, talk about the anticipation, and the playmaking a little out of structure, because he dropped back at first. He went 1, 2, and then started to roll out. It was almost like he was kind of looking downfield for Jordan Addison and then dropped it in there perfectly into Addison's hands. There was another one today where we saw a definition of layering the football, where Murray was able to drop it right over a linebacker who was jumping up. Might have been Eric Wilson. Can't remember who exactly it was. Jumping up for the ball, dropping back into his zone coverage. And there's Justin Jefferson. And he did go down kind of to one knee to get it, but it was a great example of putting the ball up over somebody, dropping it into the wide receiver. He also had another positive throw to Jordan Addison that was perfectly on time. Drop back, hit the back foot, hitch, let it go, anticipation, accuracy along the sideline. And those were 3 of his passes that were a little more down the field. I put down one of them as more of an intermediate pass, I think, but still, like, very, very good throws from Kyler Murray overall today in that first practice. in terms of lowlights, when you go 13 for 14, there's not exactly many. So there was one negative throw down the sideline where he just airmailed Jordan Addison. It was probably 25 yards down the field and he overthrew him, but that was it. A very sharp practice for Kyler Murray. And I think the biggest thing is that when you're talking about the highlights, look who we're talking about hitting Jordan Addison down the field, hitting Justin Jefferson down the field. That is more of the type of practice that we had seen once or twice so far from Kyler, probably two times, maybe three max, but probably two times that we were looking for over these last couple of days, which does tie into the timing and getting Kyler ready. The other thing is too that Kevin O'Connell mentioned that they are going through kind of a pseudo pretending to get ready for the game. Now, they're not going to show any of their real offense, but kind of starting an install and going through it and simulating. And I did wonder if what we were seeing was a little more of, and there's fans out there, so it's not a full game plan or something, but a little more of, this is what we would want to see from a Wednesday practice kind of thing for the Minnesota Vikings today. And they can kind of treat it like a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices going into the preseason game against the New York Giants. So Murray with overall a very strong day. I will get back to him being named the starting quarterback in a moment, but I've got a bunch of other notes that I want to run through, starting with KOC said that JJ McCarthy is the backup quarterback and that both quarterbacks are going to play in the preseason. So people will get a good look, I think, at JJ McCarthy. And it's my opinion that JJ should play a ton in the preseason. I think it could be really great for him. Get some of that work that he hasn't had in a long time. And just when you think about, it's been almost 1,000 days since he was drafted, right? I mean, I think it has been almost that long since he was drafted, and he's only appeared in 2 preseason games, didn't throw a lot of passes at all last year, and then 10 regular season games, several of which he did not finish. So he needs all the work he could possibly get. And I also think that, fans would probably enjoy watching him in the preseason as well. And it can continue the development process. But we did see more Carson Wentz today. And you have my attention a little bit with this, Kevin O'Connell, because Carson Wentz for this entire preseason or entire offseason has barely taken throws. I mean, maybe 3, maybe 4 a day. Go in there a little bit, throw in a red zone session to some of the 3rd and 4th wide receivers, and then, off you go. And that was pretty much it. But today he was actually getting in there for some, what looked like second team work, 11 on 11 stuff. And I wonder if the next phase here is for JJ McCarthy to prove to Kevin O'Connell that he belongs as quarterback 2 when it gets to game day, because that will be a big question for Kevin O'Connell. Is Carson Wentz going to be the backup to start the season, or will it be JJ McCarthy? He did not hesitate when he said McCarthy's the backup, but if they like the way that Wentz is controlling the offense in practice in the reps that they do get, because it's not like they sent McCarthy off and just said, no, sorry, buddy, go back to the hotel and watch from there. He's practicing, he's getting reps, he's making throws, but he is now sharing that space with Carson Wentz instead of Kyler Murray. KOC said that everyone is going to play in the preseason. I don't think that everyone means absolutely everyone. I don't think that we'll see Justin Jefferson. I don't think we'll see Christian Darrisaw. That would be very surprising to me. Maybe Andrew Van Ginkel probably doesn't need any more preseason action in his life. But a lot of players who are going to play, I think, do need a little bit of a tune-up. And O'Connell in the past has dressed a lot of players for the first preseason game. He's had them go out there, take a series, and then hit the showers, which I would expect in New York with Kyler Murray. Go out there, play with Ty Felton maybe in instead of Justin Jefferson. 1 possession, go for a drive, and then go and hand off to JJ McCarthy for, I don't know, we'll see, but I'd like to see it for the rest of the first half. You don't necessarily need the second half of preseason games where you're not playing against all that quality of competition, but you're still going up against 2s during the first half. I could see that being beneficial for McCarthy. Also, Caleb Banks still only getting a handful of full team, full speed reps today, but because I was not tracking the throws, I was able to really zero in on Caleb Banks, and I watched 3 snaps in a row for him at 5-on-5, and I thought I kind of saw a spectrum of things from Banks. There was one snap where the get off was a little bit slow, where I thought, he just didn't fire off the ball the way that Jalen Redmond does, for example. Jalen Redmond's one of the best, I think, at timing out that snap and firing off the ball. And so he didn't make a lot of progress. And there was another one where he kind of got stifled on a pass rush, but there was a handoff where he did a bit of a swim move and just the offensive lineman went for a ride and he was able to penetrate and, make a play or cause an issue for the running back with the penetration there. So you see some of that power and strength and quickness from Caleb Banks. He will be interesting to watch in the preseason of how many snaps he gets, because we have not seen him take more than a handful each day during training camp. Have seen more of Dominique Orange. He was coming back from a little bit of something and he's gotten more and more work. He impressed me at times during the night practice, and I noticed him a couple of times today as I was watching the trenches that, Orange really packs a punch. He's a very strong guy, and not just fat, but he's just strong. And he gets his hands on somebody. It's like, it's got that John Madden pow to it when he does. And you can see that when he's in the game, and also kind of the niftiness with his feet. I don't know how much he's going to play right away when we get to the NFL season, if it's going to be a little more of a rotational role. I think Levi Drake Rodriguez, Ty Ingram Dawkins, these guys have played really well in training camp, deserve to be the starters, and then rotate in the rookies. I think that's a good place to start for them, but we'll see how that progresses as we go forward. Will Fries did not practice today, so it was Joe Huber. And that's one that does, now I don't know if there's anything that's going to keep Will Fries out for any amount of time, or it might have just been a veteran day because he did practice the other night on the turf and all that sort of stuff. So he might have just taken one day off. But I think the interior offensive line is going to be something to watch closely for the second unit when we get to the preseason. I'll have a bigger, on maybe Thursday or something, a bigger preview. But Joe Huber, Michael Juergens, Henry Bird, what do you really have there in terms of who you can trust for the interior, the offensive line? And Fries being out was a little bit of a reminder of that. Still did not see Jacoby Thomas, but Jay Ward was back, and we're just seeing a ton of Jamal Adams. And he was blitzing today. He was playing safety today. I mean, he's out there for a lot of reps. He was blitzing all over the place. And I guess I wonder if with Jamal Adams, the way they're treating these practices is he going to be on the 53-man roster or not? I mean, right now, I probably would have him on there. I haven't made a 53 over the last, 10 days. I guess I need like a preseason 53 just to feel something. But when it comes to, trying to project his role, I'm really unclear on it, whether he is going to be a part of this team or not. It feels like he could be. If he shows them enough, and if he could play linebacker and safety and blitz, maybe they're trying to work out what exactly role he's going to have rather than whether he's going to be on the team. So we'll see with that. Miles Price had a good catch today from J.J. McCarthy. It was called back as a pick play, but Miles Price is a guy who could, with his ability to break tackles, legitimately show the Vikings in preseason that there's something there as a wide receiver, because for me, it's been leaps and bounds over last year. We barely saw him as a receiver in training camp, and now he's made a lot of catches, made a lot of plays. Had one in the night practice. It was a throw from McCarthy that he nabbed near the sideline, and he might be making a case for himself to be part of something here. Definitely the depth, but maybe even, hey, Miles Price is in the game and they get him the football or something, but he's been going downfield and making plays, which I didn't know if that was actually in there. Terrell Davis, who is a deep on the roster wide receiver, had a couple catches today. Guys like that are getting a little more preparation this week to go into the preseason game. He is someone that I have my eyes on. He led all of college football in 2024 playing D2 in receiving, and was brought in here. Hasn't gotten many opportunities. Same with Dylan Bell and pretty much anyone else on the third team. So that will be somebody to watch even over these next couple practices. Do we see more of those third teamers as they get ready for the preseason? And things got chippy today. There was some pushing and shoving. Jawan Jennings was involved, which I expect him to be quite a bit, but we have, yes, reached that portion of practice where somebody will say, it's going to be feeling pretty good to hit somebody else. can't wait for that to be said. So there are your notes for today. Now let's get into Kyler Murray being named the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin O'Connell had one comment that really stood out above the rest to me, that, there was a lot of talking from O'Connell and a lot of trying to break it all down and go through it, but where he was asked directly about why Kyler, I think this was his most insightful answer.
Not to dive too far into it, but what I would say is, there's moments in time where there's comfort from Kyler in the scheme. He had some really high completion days where, he was able to show some really, really good understanding of just putting the ball in play, playing with great timing, rhythm. You guys have seen him be explosive when there's opportunities there, but you've also seen him check the ball down and put the ball in play and get us from a 1st and 10 to a 2nd and 3. And then, as you continue to look at the body of work through those 10 days, what jumped out is what could be.
Yeah, I think that last part is what really stands out, but also, talking about just how we don't know how Kevin O'Connell viewed things when he would go back and watch it in practice, where sometimes a check down, we would kind of be saying, all right, whatever, check down, kind of move on to the next one. And I will admit that in my tracking system that I created for this summer to try to give you guys as much insight as I possibly could about what was happening out there, a lot of those are written down as routine because I'm judging the throws, not trying to necessarily judge the process, but just here's the results. Was it a positive play? Was it a negative play? Was it just something that didn't require a whole lot of extra skill? But if you're O'Connell, you understand on this particular play, if you just leave it off to TJ Hawkinson or check it down to Aaron Jones and we get 6 or 7 yards, that it's 2nd down and manageable. And that's really what he wanted from JJ McCarthy at times last year when he talked about the power of completions over and over again. And with Murray, I think that throughout camp, the last couple of practices before today, there was a lot made of those and maybe less made of the ones earlier in camp where he had those high completion days and so forth. But it's the last sentence that stands out the most for me. It's what could be for this offense. And with Kyler Murray's skill set, the way that he throws the football, we saw it on a day like today with those throws that lead the wide receiver to go out and make a play. He's had so many of those with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison that I think that that's one of the things that O'Connell is looking at. The other thing is that even as bad as the night practice was, and we kind of write down scrambles as just a nothing or a negative, but there was a play in the red zone where Murray dropped back. It was instant pressure, and the velocity that he hit running into the end zone, it was lightning. It was just immediately swoof and right into the end zone. And I think that that's part of this equation as well. And it looks to me like they're designing some of the run stuff to include Kyler's rushing skill set, his scrambling, his playmaking. But really, when you talk about someone who just 2 years ago gained 576 yards rushing, that's a lot. That's a lot of first downs. It's a lot of extra yardage that even if that's not exactly what O'Connell was looking for, it does raise the potential floor and ceiling of the offense. So what could be based on what he's seen? And he also pointed out that you get to a point where you just have to make a decision, and that's what they based it on. So that was interesting from O'Connell. And here was Kyler Murray on his viewpoint on the competition.
Timing, this happening right now?
The whole process was great. Full transparency from KO to me to JJ to everybody in the room. The competition was what it was, and it's everything I expected it to be. I didn't expect to be handed the job or anything like that. I just expected to come here and compete, and I'm very appreciative of how it was handled.
So there's Kyler Murray, very appreciative of how it was handled, which leads me to the 5 reactions that I have for you, and then we'll get into your questions and comments and thoughts and a FanDuel question of the day and so forth. So number 1, how it was handled. I have no issue with how Kevin O'Connell handled this quarterback competition. Now, you could say, and I have, if it was me and he had asked me back in March, hey, what would you do? I would say get Kyler Murray as many reps as you possibly can. I wouldn't worry about JJ McCarthy and his development or his thoughts on this or anything else. I would just plug, that's how I would have done it. But O'Connell was very clear from the outset and very, very transparent with both us and the fans in his press conferences about how this was going to go, how many reps were going to be given to each guy, his plans, what he wanted to see, everything else. And then the day that they decide that Murray's going to be the starting quarterback, he's out in front explaining everything and answering every question. So I have no issue with O'Connell's explanations. And I think that if we try to go a layer deeper, that pushing Kyler Murray as much as possible as someone who is here with basically no investment whatsoever from this team. They've never met him. They've never coached him. They have no idea what it's going to be like. Wanting to find that out before anointing him, especially with some questions from his past. I think that was a little farther in the past, but even then are you going to be able to learn the offense? Are you going to put in the work? All those sorts of things. Making him prove it in a quarterback competition shouldn't be considered a huge issue. Now, I think also the timing was right, where he got to a point you have to now start preparing to play real games in the middle of training camp. There are only so many reps to go around. You've got preseason games. You have days off. It's not every single day anymore that you have practice. So you got to start moving over to making your decision. I think that O'Connell did that at the right time, and it sounded very intentional. It sounded like this is where they had identified. This is when we will make our decision unless we are totally surprised by one thing or another, or there's an injury or something like that. And there wasn't. So I think O'Connell gave JJ McCarthy also a ton of time to develop and helped him improve. And I think he was very positive about McCarthy throughout. And I saw a lot of McCarthy talking with the coaches and things like that after practice. I mean, I think there was a lot of development time for him. We all knew that this was going to be really, really difficult for JJ McCarthy to win this job based on how he performed last year, the concerns with the erratic nature of his play, and with a quarterback coming in who is still considered in the third tier of the NFL by the rest of the league, with quarterbacks like CJ Stroud and Bo Nix and Daniel Jones, all established good NFL quarterbacks that are not, elite or top notch, but still, that's not where McCarthy has been so far in his career. So it was always going to be really difficult. But the way that the reps were split up, McCarthy got a lot of work with the ones overall and a ton of work just in general to develop and for them to get a full picture of what JJ McCarthy could do. So I don't think that anyone was wronged or mistreated, and I'll include ourselves in the media this way as well from Kevin O'Connell. I thought that with the fans and with us coming out from the very beginning, he could have hid this away and said, good luck you guys figuring out what I'm doing or whatever else. And he didn't do that. I thought he was very honest about it all the way through. And the more, we can tell you, and the more that he can tell you what's going on to the fan base, I think the better everyone can understand what's going on at TCO Performance Center. So that's take number one. No problems with the way this competition was held. Number two is that Kyler Murray showed numerous times that he has potential upside, even if there was not great consistency. And that is the story of Kyler Murray so far in the National Football League, which is he will have 8 weeks where he's the MVP and 8 weeks where he performs more like not just the 20th best quarterback, but the 35th best quarterback in the league. And it is on Kevin O'Connell to figure out how to smooth that over. But I think we saw all of the potential upside. And when O'Connell says what could be, the throws to Justin Jefferson, the downfield stuff, the accuracy underneath, which, as we learned last year, cannot be understated how important that is in this offense, which Kirk Cousins in 2023 had one of the lowest average depth of targets in the entire NFL, but was very effective throwing underneath in Kevin O'Connell's offense. So I think sometimes we only think of it as Darnold just ripping dimes 40 yards down the field, but there was a precision that Kirk ran this with in 2023 that I think we've seen at times from Kyler as well. And we've also seen a couple of bad decisions, and we've also seen some inconsistency with accuracy and how well he's seeing the defense. And the reaction to the blitzes and pass rush was not what you would want to see. which speaks to Kyler during his career against pressure has been very up and down. And again, a way to mitigate that is to keep it 3rd and short, right? Not to get into a lot of 3rd and 12s because you can't run the football, to allow him to have good vision on quick outs and stuff like that that are going to be throws that he's very comfortable with from the past, and then pick the right times to push the ball down the field. But I think the upside is really there. Is the upside a top 5 offense? I don't think so, but I think the upside is more of a top 10 to 12 to 15 offense, which can give you a chance. But it may be there one week and not the other, at least from what we've seen so far. And now we're going to go forward into these final practices. But, this is about the time, and I think Alec Lewis tweeted that it was the 14th of August when Sam Darnold really started getting all the first team reps because of JJ's injury. And so it's right around the same time where things turned for Sam Darnold. We started to see that today from Murray. Just want to see consistency day in and day out from him as we go forward in practice, because that's the biggest concern in the regular season. Third thing in the 5 reactions to the decision is what happens next to JJ McCarthy. I think that there is not a good reason to seek a trade for JJ McCarthy. You have him under contract for this year, next year. You have lots of time to see if he ends up in a game. I know that there are people who have bizarrely declared that Kyler Murray will definitely get injured. He did play 11 straight games in 2023 when he came back, and 17 games in 2024. So it's not like he's never had stretches where he's played a lot of games. What's 17 and 11? Is that 28 straight games after he came back from his ACL injury? Well, no, and then he had the 5 more. So that's 33 straight games after he came back from his ACL injury until he had the foot injury, which he was going to come back from, but they decided to go to the bottom and draft Jeremiah Love. But the point just being that I don't know, and no one knows what injuries are going to happen, but I would want JJ McCarthy there as someone who knows the offense inside and out, who we have seen win games, who has great athleticism, arm strength, can make plays, and be an option if Kyler Murray were to go down. And then you would also get into sort of finding out mode as well of whether there was a reason to keep him beyond this. The only reason that you would not continue to keep JJ McCarthy, who, by the way, is going to talk to us tomorrow, would be if, McCarthy is just deeply unhappy and he's not showing up on time to meetings anymore, and he's just flipping tables, and it just, really, really needs to get out of here. Maybe you do it at that point, or if a team showed up with a 2nd round draft pick, maybe you do it at that point, but I don't really see it as being necessary at all to consider trading JJ McCarthy at this point. Getting rid of young quarterbacks just doesn't feel like it's a great idea kind of ever. And looking at you, Tennessee Titans, for just giving away Malik Willis, for example, to the Green Bay Packers. He came into a couple of games and look how important he was. I mean, we could see something like that from JJ McCarthy as well, if McCarthy wants to be that. I mean, if he looks at Malik Willis and says that could be me, or, even Jordan Love, who was a backup for quite some time, and says that could be me, then I think that he's somebody you absolutely do not want to get rid of. So it depends on him a lot. Number 4 is the rest of the team deserve this outcome. This has been a very positive camp for the Minnesota Vikings. The offensive line has looked improved and healthy. There are concerns, but the run game has looked more complicated, more effective. Really liked another rep today from Damon Claiborne, but Mason has looked good and Jones has looked good, and the coordination of the offensive line has improved day in and day out. The young defensive linemen have looked very good. The corners have looked really good. Charles Demings has emerged quickly. The linebacker group is very deep and dangerous when you talk about their blitzing ability and so forth. I mean, this is a good football team, and it deserves a veteran quarterback who gives them a chance. A guy who has won games before to give them a shot. This is not a team that you're going to look at and go, well, we'll just kind of see what happens and then we'll have more answers on JJ. It's not that team. Not right now. It is not. Maybe there have been other times where they should have gone into that mode. But right now, with all the veteran players they have and all the emerging players they have, they deserve their absolute best shot to become a winning team this year. And the last one is anyone who is making declarations about how this is going to go is a fool. You're a fool. If you're saying Kyler's going to go 8-9, I got to be honest. I don't know how anybody could try to predict the Minnesota Vikings, especially when one of these comes up. It's worked so many times for this team. It's worked with Sam Darnold. It's worked with Brett Favre. Where was Brett, by the way, when he got to Minnesota? I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, was the trends going up for old Brett when he got to Minnesota? How about the trends for Randall Cunningham? How about this, who was coming out of retirement? How was the trends for Case Keenum, who barely won the backup job? How was the trends for, Sam Darnold? There's been a lot of quarterbacks who have come through Minnesota with these receivers and coaches and environment and all those things who've had a lot of success. And yeah, I'm aware if you're going to remind me they haven't made the Super Bowl in 50 years or won the Super Bowl, I know that. So if you want to make a prediction that they will not win the Super Bowl, congratulations. You and 31 other fan bases are correct. And I wish you the best of luck being right. I mean, it's got to feel good to be right, so you might as well take kind of the most obvious saying that a team won't win the Super Bowl. But even then, I think that there should be a curiosity here. I think there should be an excitement, an intrigue of what this can be with an exciting player who has a lot of mobility that we haven't seen since, Dante Culpepper in terms of really a running threat as a quarterback. And then Justin Jefferson potentially coming back to life, which he has absolutely done during this training camp. And there's a lot of storylines here of where this is going to go. And, I see a lot of people who are unenthused and think that it's just committing to being mediocre. One is, again, after Sam Darnold won 14 games 2 years ago, I have no idea when their over-under was 6.5, how anyone could pretend to think they know what's going to happen next. I mean, this could be over quick, or this could take us all the way deep into January. I have no idea. You have no idea. And I'm interested to certainly find out what's going to happen, but it could also be a really good story. And I think that a lot of people will come around on this with Kyler Murray eventually, as they did with Sam Darnold. And I know you don't have to tell me. I know how it ended. I know you got disappointed. I'm well aware since I was there in Glendale, Arizona when it happened. But, I think that Kyler Murray, it would be a great redemption story of someone who was imprisoned by a very poor franchise. And I saw Tyler Dunn put out an article on what he was, kind of dealing with there in Arizona and their thoughts. But, somebody who had it kind of tough as the number one overall pick, didn't get a lot of help. 31st in draft value, 31st in defense over the last 3 years. It's been a rough ride for Kyler Murray. A lot of people saying a lot of things about him and everything else, just like Sam Darnold when he arrived here. So I look at it as, especially as a journalist, looking for, always great stories, and Kyler Murray could be that. So why don't we get into your questions and comments and thoughts? Does not have to be quarterback related. Can be anything that you guys would like to talk about. I know I'm, very far behind on the comment section right now, but I'll try to catch up after this message from one of our wonderful sponsors. Well, first of all, actually, the FanDuel question of the day, which is the Vikings are plus 148 to make the playoffs with Kyler named as the starting quarterback. Give me your 1 to 10 confidence that the Vikings can make the postseason. That is your FanDuel question of the day. And want to tell you guys about my friends at Brooklyn Betting. I have had for a while this back issue that has been made so much more tolerable and so much better from getting the Aurora Lux mattress from Brooklyn Betting. I mean, if you have issues with the spine and uncomfortable sleeping, highly suggest their mattresses. They are cost effective, but they are also built with great durability, built to last right here in the USA. This is not a mass produced or disposable mattress. It's solid, it's intentional, it's built to last, and we got exactly what we were looking for. They offer mattresses for every body, every sleep style, even hard to find sizes, and we were able to get exactly what we want. So if we didn't, though, we could have exchanged it because they have a 120 night comfort trial. If you aren't comfortable, you could swap it out or return the mattress hassle-free. So a life changer for myself and the wife. So go to brooklynbedding.com and use the promo code PURPLE for 30% off. That is a ton. 30% off for their back to school sale. brooklynbedding.com. 30% off with the promo code PURPLE. So I'm going to scroll all the way back to the top of the comment section and Reconnected asking the next Camp Battle's backup quarterback. Is it going to be JJ or Carson Wentz? I mean, I think that will ultimately be determined. I mean, you had Kevin O'Connell saying today that it is going to be, as Mr. Buddy arrives with his toy, my dog, Buddy, can you stop? Can you stop with the toy? I'm sorry. Go to your bed. It's okay. I don't think he's going to listen. Anyway, so I think that it will be JJ McCarthy, but I also think that he has to continue to practice well in the coming weeks because training camp is not over. There's preseason games to be played, and Kevin O'Connell knows exactly what he has with Carson Wentz. He knows what that's going to look like if he puts him in real games. And I truly do think Carson Wentz has looked pretty good in the limited amount of reps that he's gotten so far. So that's going to be kind of the next decision that has to be made by Kevin O'Connell. I personally would have JJ McCarthy, I think. But, you know, there's a part of me that says Carson Wentz might be able to come in the middle of a game in better than JJ McCarthy, who I don't know has ever done something like that. Whereas if it was a longer term injury, then JJ McCarthy would make more sense to find out about him. And I also think he might give you a better chance to win if he truly has improved like they have said. From Unknown Army says, Matt, I drafted the Thrill in the Vikings defense and meaning Will Reichard and Jordan Mason. I assume you mean in fantasy football. Let me know what to expect specifically from Mason. Oh, yes, in fantasy football. Well, I think that it's going to be a duo for sure, with maybe Damon Claiborne mixing and matching at times for this team. But with the way that Jordan Mason has looked, they are starting to make a bit of a believer out of me when it comes to the actual run game. And I don't want to go too far yet because just like Kyler has to prove it in the games and everybody else does, so does Kevin O'Connell with this run game. But nothing inspires confidence from a coach more in a run game or anything than practicing well. And I think these last couple of days with the run, they have really started to get on the same page and see some explosive runs or successful runs. Yeah, they can't tackle yet, but when someone hits a huge hole, there's been some impressive ones from Mason and he looks really ready to go. But I don't know if Mason is going to get the full share of carries because, you know, Jones has also looked pretty good back there as well. And Aaron Jones is trusted and he's the guy that they, you know, can believe in when it comes to the pass protection and so forth. So I don't know if that's the best fantasy pick ever if you took him high. If you took him a little bit later, I mean, could it be 1,000 yards? I think that's very possible. For Truth One Way says, I hope that JJ gets a chance to learn and stays professional. I do as well. I think that McCarthy has had a very tough ride through the beginning of his career. And I think that he has fallen on some bad luck that has held him back in terms of development that was so sorely needed. And if he looks at this time, and we're going to hear from him tomorrow, but I imagine he's going to say this, if he looks at this time as a real opportunity to continue to grow and looks at other quarterbacks around the league who have been backups in their careers, looks at the fact that a lot of quarterbacks who were drafted just even this year who are younger or the same age as him, then, you know, I think that JJ McCarthy can make a lot out of this. So, you know, I really do believe that my dog is loving this toy. Gonna text my wife to see if she can come grab Mr. Buddy here. He loves the toy. What can you say? What can you say? But squeaking is not always the best for for live stream So she's going to come grab the dog here. But anyway, so, I do think that it is the best for JJ McCarthy to view this as a tremendous opportunity for development, for his chance to grow into a quarterback that could be a starter eventually. But I still saw in this camp a lot of issues that I think would keep him from being as consistent as you'd like him to be if he was going to be a winning and starting quarterback. I mean, I think that that's really the thing that you're looking for from JJ McCarthy is the consistency of accuracy, consistency with timing, running the offense. And you only get there by practicing. And I know people have said, well, how can you really develop if you don't get into games? Well, I would ask Jordan Love and Malik Willis the same thing. Those guys played preseason and they practiced to practice. I mean, how do you get ready to sing in a concert? Well, you practice. How do you get ready to play in a golf tournament? You practice. And these practices in the season are not for the faint of heart sometimes. I mean, the hard Wednesday practice when they first are putting stuff in, these are like, full speed and everything. You're dropping back, you're making plays, you're getting pressures, all those sorts of things. Like that's what you're supposed to do if you are the scout team quarterback. So I think that there's a lot of great opportunity here for JJ McCarthy. And, I think that there's the potential that he could be a starter someday. And we also have to acknowledge that there's realities to that. Like there are realities that first round picks sometimes don't work out. And, there's if you look at the stats compared to him and EJ Manuel, him and Blaine Gabbert, there are other guys who were drafted around this same part of the draft that just didn't work out. And it happens. So I guess what happens next is up to him. So let's see. Melkill says, respect the coach making a tough decision with plenty of time to focus on the season prep. I totally agree. I mean, I think that, when it comes to Kevin O'Connell's handling of this, I'm sure that he wanted to achieve a couple of different goals. One was to put the pressure on Kyler Murray to learn this and to grind as hard as he possibly could because they didn't have to necessarily make him the starter if they didn't want to, if they didn't really believe in him. But I also think that even if it was close, I did not have it as being that close, but if it was in their minds and it was a really hard decision, which O'Connell did say for him it was, then they reached a point where you just couldn't go any farther. Like you'd love to have 400 practices between these two guys, but they couldn't. They only get 10, and then it's time to start getting ready for the NFL season. So going with the option of the person who has looked, I think, more comfortable overall in the offense, who has played with better rhythm and timing and anticipation and all the things that are important and has a lot more experience playing made sense. And all this could change also very quickly when we get into the NFL season. Expose says, putting the cart before the horse here, but if Kyler plays well, will the Vikings extend during the season or are we in possible Darnold Jones situation again? I would say that a contract extension midseason does not seem very likely. It would actually be shocking if that happened. You don't see it very much in the NFL for almost any player. Like that stuff generally happens during the season. And I do think that you will arrive if he plays really well at a fork in the road of, are you going to keep going down this path with him? Or are you going to decide to go with what's behind door number 2? And you can definitely hedge your bet a little bit. And Daniel Jones is evidence of that in Indianapolis because the way the Colts set up that contract, they signed him for 1 year to be the starter at a low wage for a starting quarterback. Then he played really, really well, was really well liked by everybody in the organization, played like a second or third tier quarterback for them. And they brought him back on a 2-year deal that is closer to, more of a, I guess it's, looking at it, it's probably locked in as a 2-year deal. But it is flexible with their salary cap. It's not locking him in for long term, and they get to kind of decide what they think of Daniel Jones. And if you've got a starting quarterback, you could probably trade them if you want to. So I think if it went really well and he was totally beloved within the organization, had a great season, top 10 offense, and everything was going awesome, and let's say they win in the playoffs and everything else, and they look like a team that's just, right there and can compete for years to come with their good quarterback, even if he's not great, I think there's a good chance that they would. And then I would just say to keep your contract hysteria in check until we get to that point. Because once you look at some of the contracts, what if he gets $50 million? As I mentioned the other day on the show, there's not a single quarterback in the NFL this year with a $50 million cap hit. And Daniel Jones is taking up 6% of the Indianapolis Colts' cap. Contracts have gotten way more flexible with the amount of money and the cap going up and everything else. But you talk about cart before the horse. And that's why I think what I would like to request from a lot of Vikings fans for this season is one step at a time. I love big picture front office talk, and I've tried myself to sort of set the bar of what it would need to be. Top 10 passing offense. Kyler fits really well with the franchise. He still is not old. So, you could have more years of him, but you'd have to believe in him, really trust him with the offense, and feel like if you build an elite defense that he's going to give you a chance to go to the playoffs and win games. I mean, if you walk out of the season with that, then that's your quarterback. That's what you're looking for, is somebody who gives you a chance, because we're in a league these days where that seems to be all that's required. I mean, when you look at Jalen Hurts winning the Super Bowl, Brock Purdy reaching a Super Bowl, Bo Nix almost getting there. Gosh, CJ Stroud is like one or two throws from being, maybe in the AFC Championship or going to the Super Bowl with their defense. It seems to me that the difference between the 5th best quarterback and the 25th is probably the smallest it's ever been in NFL history. So if you have the 17th best, as Bo Nix showed us last year, you can definitely still win if you could build a strong enough roster. And yes, you are paying your quarterback. So did Seattle. They also paid their quarterback, but they were able to draft and build around that guy and have a competitive rebuild that resulted in a good enough team to win the Super Bowl. So that's what Nolan Teasley is here to do. But, it is certainly cart before the horse, because we are on day one of Kyler as the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm having trouble even myself, as always thinking 3 years, timelines and so forth, figuring out, well, how is this, going to go, and under what circumstances would they want to potentially keep him? And if that does not happen, then there's a whole other barrel of questions that come along with it. I mean, if you go 9-8 and you miss the playoffs on the last day of the season, you lose to the Bears or something, and Kyler no-shows, what do you do if he's been okay but not great, and you're not going to draft very high, and are you going to start a rookie? And then we have all those conversations that get a little bit scary, but I think we can wait until we see Kyler play one football game for the Vikings to actually, get there at this point. So why is Kyler wearing the beanie cap in the middle of summer? Well, I mean, he is from Texas and Arizona. It might just be the hat that he has. I mean, he did wear it in one other press conference. He didn't really give a good answer to that. Someone did ask him that question. I think it's probably a helmet hair issue, and he just had that hat in his locker and grabbed it and threw it on. I know that I am a hat guy, as you guys can tell, debuting a new hat here. But that might be why he just didn't want to show off the hair. It could be. That's my best guess. That's a good question. We did reach 16,000 subscribers. That's great. That's great to see, Steven. You've been tracking that well. I have not been paying too much attention to that. BM, unless Kyler wins and gets serious MVP votes, I want the Vikings to move on from both next offseason. This is what I mean, BM, is that you're way, 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 way too far out in front of yourself. And also setting the bar at this guy better win MVP when I don't recall Sam Darnold winning MVP, and I don't recall Jalen Hurts winning MVP, and I don't recall Brock Purdy winning MVP when those guys were representing the National Football Conference in the Super Bowl. I mean, I think that it would feel a little bit different if the Vikings were in the AFC of, okay, well, look, and we went through this with Kirk a lot of times, was Drew Brees was there. Aaron Rodgers was there. And it felt like, how are you ever going to get past them? And even Matthew Stafford, when he goes to the Rams, how are you ever going to get past them? Well, Stafford is now, on his last legs of his career. Darnold is very, very good, as we know. Hurts can still win a heck of a lot of games. Goff, we'll see with Caleb Williams. Like, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks, but they all have flaws in the NFC. And so I'm not totally changing the tune of, well, now you could just get any old quarterback and be fine. But if you have Kyler Murray's best career year here, he's been 8th by PFF in his best career year, 12th as recently as 2024. I think if you get into that range with the way that Kyler performs, that this team, this defense, this coaching, these receivers, it looks like some of the other teams, and I'm not saying that they're ready to go to the Super Bowl. Other teams have been a little more stacked than them, but it kind of looks like some of the other teams who have made things interesting and taken a real shot at it over the last few years in the NFC. So that's why, I can't set the bar at if he doesn't win MVP, then get rid of him. Didn't they just make that mistake with Sam Darnold? Like, if he doesn't win in the playoffs, then get rid of him. That's what they did, and he went and won the Super Bowl. So I think you have to have a very rational bar for Kyler Murray of, can you walk into the playoffs with a top 10 passing game, top 10 offense, and you know that your defense is probably going to give you a chance and outscore your opponents by 100 points and those types of things. Like, can you reach some of those markers over this season to then prove that, you deserve to be a longer term option? But I also think that finding another option, is it going to be Baker Mayfield? Well, that's kind of the same guy, maybe a little bit better, but it's kind of the same guy. And is it going to be JJ McCarthy if, he plays? I guess he's still in that conversation and could be part of a competition. But if you're going to another first round draft pick, then you're pretty much taking it all down. So, there is the fear of getting stuck in the middle. I totally agree. But the middle has been a lot more movable in recent years than it used to be. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think that, Scene projects as Kyler is nothing like Darnold. Well, the funny thing about that sentence is that Kyler coming here has actually been wildly better than Sam Darnold was at the time he arrived during his career. When Sam Darnold arrived here, and I understand what you mean, like skill set wise, but when Sam Darnold arrived here, he was considered a backup level type quarterback. He had been a backup for an entire season. He had never had a top 15 year, was never considered by the league a top 15 quarterback at any point during his career. If you go look at the quarterback tiers by Mike Sando, he was just considered a flat out bust, one of the biggest busts of the last 10 years. Murray is a guy that has been considered in that range, has statistically performed in that range 3 times as a starter when he's played full seasons. It is quite a bit different in the resume that the guy has. And it is also different in the skill set, where Darnold would hang in and get blasted as he ripped it down the field, whereas Murray is going to be more apt to roll out. It's going to be more apt to scramble and keep his eyes downfield. And also, instead of firing it at just absurd velocities, you're probably going to see him offer a little more touch passes out in front of receivers and have them go and run and get it. And I remember when I talked to Kurt Warner last year for a story, and we were talking about throwing the football. And it was really, really cool because Kurt got on, a FaceTime call with me and was showing me some things about throwing the ball. And we were just chatting. And he said, when you throw with a lot of touch, and this is what Kyler Murray does, it gives your wide receivers a better opportunity to adjust. He said that there's a lot of throws in the greatest show on turf that he didn't throw it exactly where he was trying to throw it, but it had touch on it. So his receivers were able to navigate underneath the ball, readjust in the air. They know where the ball is supposed to be going, and the corners are not always getting their heads around, and you can make plays. So Darnold had some of that for sure. Kyler has a lot of that. And I think with these wide receivers, you're talking about, can you give them a chance? Murray is more likely to throw underneath, where Darnold pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, sometimes with negative results. So they have very different skill sets, but in terms of by the time they got here, Murray was considered a much better quarterback than Sam Darnold was when he got here. Let's see. Scott says, can we stop talking about JJ now? Yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes with JJ McCarthy. I mean, I don't think that the story has to end. And, O'Connell used a way of phrasing it of like the pen is in his hand of what will happen with his story. I do think that there is a section of the fan base who is going to hang on to the idea of JJ McCarthy for a long time. But I would say to those people, it doesn't have to be over. Like, you can live in a world where you want your football team to make the best choice at quarterback, give them the best chance to win, give you the best chance to watch winning or entertaining football or both on Sunday, and give Kevin O'Connell a chance to show the world that he could still be the quarterback whisperer and get Justin Jefferson Offensive Player of the Year. Like, you can not let go of the possibility that JJ McCarthy improves and succeeds and also want those other things as well. And I guess we live in sort of a all or nothing type of universe when it comes to sports, but you truly don't have to. You really don't. You can want your team to succeed and also want things to end up working out with JJ McCarthy eventually. But anytime it does not go the way we expect with a first round quarterback, it's always going to be discussed a lot. It's always going to be fascinating. It's always going to be compelling. There's always going to be people who never move on. And I'm not saying that you have to right now because he didn't win the quarterback competition. There's a whole season to go and anything could happen. Now, if they trade him, yeah, it might be time to move on, I guess. But the point just being that if you were a Ryan Tannehill believer or something, eventually you got vindicated. Or even if you were, Malik Willis is such a good example. If you loved him coming out in the draft and you wanted that guy more than anything, and then you saw him play, it didn't go well. It doesn't have to be the end of the story. And there's a lot more quarterback movement than there's ever been. But I think today would be the day to move on from some things. The idea that McCarthy outperformed Kyler Murray in training camp. I think that folks who believed that, all my data and all my time watching every single practice, I would just not agree with that at all. There were some people that did believe that, whether they were actually there at camp or not, I don't know. But, from keeping track of all the stats and presenting them to you guys every day, it was a pretty clear to me that, Kyler Murray had been the better quarterback, but, I think that that's the time to kind of end that discussion. Like it's been decided and they're going with Kyler Murray. So there's no reason to really debate, JJ versus Kyler or anything like that anymore, because that's been decided. And then, we'll see where it goes with Kyler and his performance throughout the rest of camp. That narrative could probably, go away. And then also, no more kind of comparing every single practice or every single fan video that somebody got of, a good JJ throw to try to kind of make a point or whatever, So I think that you can leave that behind and sort of move on to the next phase of how good is this team going to be with Kyler Murray? And then where is JJ McCarthy going to go into the future? That's kind of where I would think that the discussion would go. After today, that's how I would say it. Anthony says, now that Murray is quarterback one, please compare the Vikings 2026 roster to the Dolphins 2023. I believe that's the blueprint for Frank Smith is providing. Well, that's an interesting thought because, a lot of movement pre-snap on the 2023 team. I do think that they don't have a Tyreek Hill because there have only been so many Tyreek Hills just in all of NFL history. So they don't have the prime Tyreek Hill that they're going to be able to send downfield, but they do have, downfield receivers like Justin Jefferson. I also don't think that Frank Smith, that they hired him to run the offense. It's still going to be Kevin O'Connell's offense, but in terms of the running backs, didn't they get the league lead in touchdowns or something out of Raheem Mostert? Like, this running game does have a tendency, the Miami Dolphins, which really came from the San Francisco 49ers, it does have a tendency to make the most out of pretty much anyone. And that goes back for a long ways, to the Denver Broncos Olandis Gary, right? And Mike Anderson and then guys like that, Tatum Bell. Like there were running backs for Denver that showed up and you'd be like, who are these people and why are they getting 1,300 yards? So bringing in somebody who kind of has that connection of coming from essentially Mike McDaniel from San Francisco and working with Frank Smith there and bringing some of those ideas here, you do believe that it gives them a chance to have the best run game that they have ever had with Kevin O'Connell. And what I really feel is commitment to it. I feel that from the players' comments. I feel that from watching it, that they wanted to commit to the way that they're doing this scheme. So I don't recall exactly. I guess I can pull it up here. I can pull it up since you asked really nicely. It's a good question. Let me pull it up here and see kind of where they ranked as an offensive line. Where the Dolphins ranked as an offensive line in 2023. That might give us a good idea of where the Vikings have to rank to get that kind of run game. Although, look, I mean, they just need a decent run game. They don't need to have the best run game in the NFL. The Dolphins, let's see, run blocking wise, actually this tells you about the scheme. They were mid-pack in terms of blocking, and in terms of rushing, they were top 5 PFF graded. So, I mean, that tells you a lot. If you have a great scheme, you do not necessarily have to have the best performances in order to get a lot of production out of it. So that's kind of an interesting stat there. I agree, Anthony, that he says that, even if you look at the RPOs, the pistol, the shotgun, Frank Smith's hire is more strategic than just the running game. Oh, I mean, the pistol is something clearly that they wanted to bring in. You could be right about that. Definitely could be. Bruno says the NFC North is stacked. The least injured team will win the division. 3 teams may make the playoffs. I totally agree with you. Totally, 100% agree that it's going to be about defense. It's going to be about injuries. It's going to be about small micro decisions, last minute drives. I mean, think about how many games between the Vikings and Bears or Lions or Packers over the years have come down to a last drive. I mean, I've thought about this with the NFC North that this season a lot in tons of ways could rely on who makes the final kicks, who gets the ball last, who makes that one stop. And that's what makes it so much fun to watch, but also a little bit, daunting when you have 3 teams that are really good. But also there was a big injury for the Detroit Lions just yesterday. Cade Mays, the center that they brought in for the Carolina Panthers, is now going to be out like half the season or more with, I believe it's a wrist injury. So they're scrambling once again to find the center position. And that's the thing about all these teams. And then Kobe Bryant, from the safety who is from Seattle, he got hurt for the Bears and he's going to be out longer term. And their secondary, I mean, is good, but now you're pretty banged up there already at the safety position. And they're going to be asking Dylan Thieneman to, try to be great for that team right away as a rookie in the NFL. Not the easiest thing in the world to do. So the point is that when you look at this Vikings team and you go, well, Kyler's a flawed quarterback. But then you look at Green Bay and go, that's a flawed defense. Go through Green Bay's depth chart and roster and look at the defense. It's flawed. The Detroit Lions, offensive line, they're starting a rookie at right tackle. They're now going to have to shuffle at the center position. And Jared Goff is very sensitive to pressure. So they've got that concern. Does Caleb Williams improve his accuracy, or does he have to scramble around and make crazy plays to win every game? And can they actually pressure the quarterback? None of these teams are perfect. So I think it'll be a very close race, but I see them all as being somewhere between 9 and 11 wins. Steven says, on the FanDuel question of the day, on a scale of 1 to 10, confidence the Vikings can make the playoffs is a solid 7. Not supremely confident, but also not horrible as well. I would say the same thing. I mean, I've once the schedule came out, I picked it as if Kyler Murray was going to be the quarterback, and I picked 11 wins because I think that they can play very tough in the NFC North, and I also think they have a favorable schedule elsewhere. 2 teams in the AFC East that are down quite bad at the moment, and then the NFC South, which is not the scariest division. In fact, probably most people would vote it the easiest division in football. 9 games at US Bank Stadium. Like, all these things are very favorable for the Vikings to get to 10 plus wins this year. But confidence in it, I mean, that's my pick, and I'm going to roll with it. But the confidence is probably only a 5 or a 6 because until we see real games, we won't know what Murray looks like. I think from watching camp, I would say maybe the confidence is a little bit higher. They can make the playoffs. But when you start going through, I think we might need a new NFC power rankings, which I haven't done in a while. But when you start going through and you go, all right, well, who's going to miss, right? If you got Philadelphia, Dallas can make things interesting. Washington's back with Jaden Daniels. All 4 NFC North teams have a chance. Probably only 1 team from the NFC South, and then 3 teams from the NFC West. So if you think 3 teams from the East, then 4 from the North, so that's 7, then 8, then 9, 10. You got 11 teams for 7 spots in the NFC, and one of them is taken up automatically by the NFC South, sadly. But, 11 teams for 7 spots. Can you be one of them is really the question. And there's other teams that I have a lot more question marks about. Can Dallas really turn around on defense? Is Washington going to live up to what they did their first year? Or was that kind of lightning in a bottle? San Francisco feels like the team that's most likely to fall off. You remember they just won 6 games 2 years ago. And they've had a lot of injuries and they got the substation thing. And but truly an older team that has not drafted well in a while with a pretty good quarterback and a great coach. Can that really get them there? So there's questions kind of all over the board, which is what makes it really awesome that the NFL is what it is, right? You guys are funny. Let's see. Mike Murray having better numbers is way different than being better than Love. Oh, he has better numbers than Jordan Love. Love is obviously a level above Kyler. Well, I mean, the NFL people would agree with you that they voted Jordan Love as a top 10 quarterback in the quarterback tiers, which I put a lot of value on. I mean, that's 50 people from the NFL putting their votes in for what they think of quarterbacks. They're not always right, for sure, especially if they're younger quarterbacks and so forth. They don't know what's going to happen. But in terms of putting them into tiers and who they think is better, but I think what exists for all the NFC North quarterbacks is they all have reason to like them a lot, and they all have reason to believe that they can have good seasons and put up big games and so forth. I think they also have questions as well. I have talked many times about how much I respect Jared Goff. He was 8th, and I would put him definitely as a top 10 quarterback locked in. I think that his numbers suggest maybe even better than that since he's had, 4 straight top 5 offenses. I don't think you do that by accident, but at the same time, he's got a kryptonite. And Jordan Love's inconsistency is his kryptonite, and maybe sometimes his coach is too. It's always felt like he's not totally trusted Jordan Love in his offense, where it's, all right, we're going to run. He's going to throw for 3,100 yards, 220 yards a game or something, as opposed to really letting it loose. And then, Caleb Williams has not been consistent on the short intermediate stuff, the routine throws. So Kyler, you could say, well, his issue is he's been very accurate, especially underneath, but downfield has not been as successful recently. Hasn't had these receivers, but that's a fact. And that, the scrambling can be very hit or miss. So I think each one of those quarterbacks, while they are in different buckets of the NFL, have their own issues of you can get to them on a given Sunday. BWS, am I saying that Claiborne is ahead of Xavier Scott? Not Xavier. It's just Xavier with a Z. Scott on the depth chart. As of right now, I think if they had to play a game today, Xavier Scott would be RB3 because he's experienced. He can pass protect. He can catch the football extremely, extremely well. So I think that Xavier Scott would be that guy as of right now. But I also think that RB3 versus, hey, can you use him for something, are 2 different stories. If he is a returner along with somebody that you mix and match, maybe you're seeing something with the defense that you feel like, man, if we just pitch out on a certain look that this guy could take it to the house, that I would use for sure Damon Claiborne for. I've liked a lot of what I've seen, but I also think that, patience is probably required for him. He has gotten a lot of work, and I think he has looked really explosive. There's something there with him, with Damon Claiborne. There is something there. It's just, can you get him to, understand the scheme and do all the jobs of a running back, not just be fast so he could be more of a complete player. But for sure, there's some lightning in that guy. No question about it. is the faithful. Tonight's practice was a realization for me why KOC picked Kyler as the starting quarterback, right? Because when you add up, and that's totally true, when you add up the days that Kyler's been at his best, he's had 3 of them that have looked like this, where he essentially has not even had an incompletion. There was the one Saturday practice where I know they didn't have pads, but he only incompleted 2 passes, and one was a pass interference and the other one was a drop. And every other throw was on point. And then he had a padded practice where I believe, I don't recall the exact details. I'm sure it's, still on YouTube somewhere, but it was like 3. It was like 11 for 14 with 5 positive throws. That was the day he hit multiple shots. He went 3 for 3 with the deep shots down the field. And then you see today, and each of these bigger plays is kind of along the lines of the same theme. He sees it well. He releases it. Wide receivers are able to run into where the ball's going to be, throwing to space, that kind of thing, which voids and vacancies is something that O'Connell has talked about a lot. Like, as much as JJ McCarthy had wow moments at practice, he didn't have one like that. I mean, he didn't have one where he's 13 for 14. The inconsistency is still there, as often exists for a young player. So, today is the type of day that you could see and you go, Yep, that's why. Because that's the type of practice that you would see from a Kirk Cousins, from a Sam Darnold, from veteran starting quarterbacks. And that's why you're going to have more trust. Now, Buddy does normally stay down here with me. He's usually asleep, though. He brought down a toy and started squeaking it, which, is heartbreaking because I want to jump up and start playing a little tug of war with him. But he usually is just snoozing at this time of night. I think because it's been so hot, we've taken him for some night walks. And so now he's like, I like to walk, around the neighborhood at night. Come on, let's go, So, well, maybe we'll do that after the show. Let's see. Highboy Time says, keep developing McCarthy. He was prematurely started. Again, that's like a fair and rational take that he should have had an entire year to develop. He should not have been thrown to the Wolves last year. And of course, he's got to play better than he did, and he's got to be more grounded than he was and less erratic and all those things. But when you put someone in a position like that, coming off a 14-win season with all those veteran players, and just say, hey man, go be great. There's going to be a chance with a player that didn't throw many passes in college that they weren't ready. And that turned out to be it. And I think that one of O'Connell's biggest gripes with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, just from some of the comments that he's made, is that he wasn't able to bring in a veteran quarterback who could have even, at least at the beginning of the season, helped them out if they felt like McCarthy wasn't ready. We know in hindsight, you should have just franchise tagged Sam Darnold and you would have had a serious chance last year, but that keeping Daniel Jones was something they wanted to do, or Joe Flacco, or, anybody else who was out there that could have just given you more time and maybe handled the pressure. Now that's easy to say now. Can you imagine what this chat would have looked like last year if they were saying Joe Flacco won the quarterback competition? Can you imagine? Everybody, not everyone, was on board, and it didn't work out. But, I think that with young quarterbacks, that's the issue, is that you never really know how far they're along until they play games. Now we know how far he has to go, and I think he can still get there depending on just the development and so forth. But it's not like O'Connell just took his reps away. He is still practicing. He's still getting reps. He's still out there. So he's still developing on a daily basis. And that's my point about practice. Like, it really helps, man. It really, really helps with quarterbacks, because it's just getting throws against really good NFL players time and time and time again. Toll Hawes says Rodgers didn't start until he was 24. Yeah, look, there's a lot of them through NFL history. And that's why I have never said that they should give up on JJ McCarthy, cast him aside, or anything like that. It's just that this particular situation always lined up and continued to do so throughout this training camp for the more experienced quarterback who showed an aptitude to be able to play in this offense, which I thought he did pretty consistently. Cash something was asking about the preseason. I would think that it will be Kyler Murray just one time, one series. And then I think JJ will play a lot. I think JJ will play a heck of a lot. I think that's really good for him. He should play well, I don't know about the third game, but yeah, I would even go with that. I would start him in the third game. I would play him. I wanted to play him last year in the preseason because I thought he needs to get out there and play football games. But of course, with no reliable backup with Sam Howell in there, it was like, well, if he gets hurt, you got to go Sam Howell. So you're going to have Josh Dobbs back starting if that ends up happening. So I understand why they didn't, but I've always thought this is exactly what this guy needs. So it could be a really good opportunity. Someone asked if I was surprised at all by the decision. I don't know if you mean timing or just what happened. Of course, not surprised by what happened. I had expected it for the entire camp and not surprised by the timing either. I mean, we had Will Raggets on the show. Shout out to Will. He did a Porch podcast a few weeks ago, right before camp, and picked August 11th as the date. Dane Mizutani picked August 10th, and I picked August 13th. So all of us kind of felt like you can't get into the preseason because then there's days off and there's travel days, and it's not practice every single day after this. Even though there will be lots of shows for you guys to listen to and lots of podcasts, but it won't be practice every single day like it's been through the last couple weeks. I mean, this has been like a minor league baseball schedule where you just have like every single day and then every once in a while an off day. It's been, kind of pedal to the metal. Now is when the reps start to get a little more limited and you turn toward the season. So I was not surprised by the timing or the decision at all. Who had the best stats from all of the Jackals? I'd like to say myself was the most detailed stats, but Zulgad kept first team rep numbers. So I get his newsletter and I would look at his newsletter, and Andrew kept first team 11 on 11. So everybody tried to find their own little niche within the quarterback competition. I tried to bring the positive and negative throws, which, I know is really tough. I will admit it's really tough. I tried to create a criteria and tried to lay it out there of like, look, if it's an overthrown pass, it's a negative. If it's a tight window throw, it's a positive. If it's a perfectly on time, pass that is right on the right location, right on the money, it's a positive. We tried to create that. And what, I figured out was, this could be pretty hard in real time to pick apart, but I did have a lot of help in the tent, and I'm going to continue to do it to give you, hey, this is how Kyler Murray is doing as we go forward in each one of these practices that we have available to us. So, I think, I think it's been really actually insightful to do it because I've never really done it before. And I will say that when Wentz or McCarthy or Brosmer are taking reps, I'm going to focus on other people because I feel like I have had a really tough time doing this. And then people are asking, well, how's Caleb Banks looking? How's Orange looking? How's Golday looking? How's this guy? I'm going to have a little more opportunity to focus on them and not just kind of catch little blurs. Although, Chuck Demings, you couldn't miss him. And the corners, you really couldn't miss him. Hi, boy time. You guys are talking about Bo Nix. Well, I think that Bo Nix is kind of a good comp in the way that, for Kyler Murray, in the way that he's flawed, but the scrambling can even things out. And it's a lot of short passing. Like, I think they actually are two very similar quarterbacks that you got to hit some down the field sometimes. But these types of quarterbacks, because of their scrambling, they don't have to be flawless throwing the football in order to make an impact there. And I also think their running impacts the run game too. Scott says, Kyler fans, you have it all now. Best receivers, coaching staff, defense. If he doesn't succeed, will you admit you were wrong or blame it on someone else? Look, I mean, when it comes to any of these things, one thing that I fully believe in is that if football was predictable, that it would be so boring that every single season we go in not really knowing. But when it comes to Murray, I do agree with your thought process that this is the best situation he's ever had. And if it still does not yield the type of results that he's expected to have as a number one overall draft pick, then we have a pretty good idea of what's happened here. It's kind of like, it's not exactly like this, but maybe a little bit like this, where Russell Wilson goes to Denver and he's coached by Nate Hackett. It's a disaster. And then Sean Payton comes in. He doesn't want anything to do with Russell Wilson. So he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and it doesn't really work out there either. And that was the point where it's like, okay, well, now we've kind of had enough of these, right? Kyler has never been in a good organization. Neither had Sam Darnold, neither had Geno Smith, really. I mean, I guess Geno had been with the New York Giants, but they were fading at that point. And then he goes to Seattle, and it ends up working out there. Baker Mayfield going to Tampa Bay, a very sound and solid organization after being with a Cleveland team that was messy and a Carolina team that was messy. So there's a lot of examples of this, but if Kyler comes here and does not play well enough, wins 8 games, is the 23rd best quarterback in the league, and it's just pretty blah, then I think we have a sense for what the ceiling is going to be for Kyler Murray, and he'll probably travel around from team to team in the coming years, which has been a little bit of like when Kirk comes back from the Achilles and he goes to Atlanta, and you see it and you go, okay, it wasn't going to be good enough for them to win a lot of games. He's going to go to the Raiders, and I think he's in a good spot with them to help Fernando Mendoza and play and give them a chance to win games. But we've sort of gone past the point. The difference, I guess, is that Kyler is younger than a lot of those quarterbacks where you're sort of trying to find out. But I don't think that you get 3 teams, especially when it's this one. I think you probably get 2. And it's very much, I mean, I mentioned this earlier with Dane Mizutani, but it's very much, Kevin O'Connell and Kyler Murray looking at each other like our fates are tied together here, because the talent is there for Kyler Murray. We have seen it at practice. There's no question. The talent is there, and there are stretches in his career that are just outstanding that you see it all come together. So this will be the opportunity to put it all together for a single year. I mean, I don't like to talk about things as if, oh my gosh, if your take is wrong, you have to just sacrifice yourself to the football gods? Like, I don't really understand that. If you think something that didn't work out, it's like, it's okay. I mean, that's how it goes with football. If you were the person who was over the moon when they drafted JJ McCarthy and got rid of Sam Darnold, you don't have to apologize for it. If you're somebody right now who thinks that this offense is going to be really good and exciting and it doesn't work out that way, it's not like you have to fall onto your knees and beg for forgiveness. This is football takes, folks. It's football takes. It's not life and death, guys. Sometimes the internet sort of seems like that. Really. Mads in Music says is questioning my Darnold is very, very good take. Well, he was 14th by quarterback tiers, but I mean, you are talking to the person that may have been alone on an entire island that wanted the Vikings to bring back Sam Darnold. So there's no disrespect there. I've ranted many times about how I think that he should get much more appreciation from the NFL for what he's done, but people are still acting like he is not that great. High Boy Times, the Vikings are just hoping that Kyler pans out and resurrects his career. He will bring better trade value. Meanwhile, you keep developing McCarthy. Trade value, I don't understand what we're talking about with trade value, but when it comes to developing, JJ McCarthy, I think that we sometimes have this idea that if you just develop, that it will, and the player is young, that it will just happen. That it has to happen, right? They have to get better. They have to improve, but the odds are not always in their favor. I mean, we've got some examples, but we've also got like Justin Fields examples of someone who couldn't throw with anticipation and didn't really, understand his offense and execute it and so forth. And there's a lot of those examples as well. And when you're talking about like trading Kyler to who, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, he was brought here to win games, and he's going to have a chance to do that. And he's got the talent to do it. And we've seen it repeatedly throughout practice, not every single day. And that's what we want to see as we go forward into this. But sometimes, I really feel like when we look at younger players anywhere on the field, and this is not just applied to JJ McCarthy, we always assume that the younger player has more upside. I mean, this is why even when we were talking about Vita Vea, and I know it wasn't totally like possible that they would trade for Vita Vea. I don't think they're going to trade Vita Vea. But my thought was, no, he's old. You can't go after him. It's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but every young player, every draft pick does not have magical upside, does not have, if you just develop them, if you just try harder, if the coaches just do better, like sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So, I don't think that there's, if you just develop them, a guarantee that, and that's what it sometimes is treated like. Like, oh, if you just had played him this year, if you just had developed him. I mean, if they thought that, I think he would be playing, right? I mean, there's got to be enough concern about the potential chance that he would not take a step forward. And again, from my thoughts watching practice, I have just not really seen it. I haven't seen it to the point where I would definitively be able to tell you this, and this are so much better. And that's why he's on this path to greatness. If that was the case, I think he'd be playing, but it hasn't been. So, yes, Dan, when Favre arrived, it was pure mania. And the internet was just getting started. So it was like one of the, first things I ever followed on Twitter. It's funny that I've been friends with Judd now for 10 years because I was following Judd way back then. And what a scene that was. But, it's just an example. And, I'm not projecting anything or predicting anything other than I think they could be a very competitive team and go into the playoffs with a chance. But Favre's a great example. I mean, what did you think when Favre arrived? Other than this is crazy, but did you watch him play for the New York Jets and think that you were going to the NFC Championship and you would be one play away from going to the Super Bowl? I don't know how many people actually thought that that was going to be the case, or just, hey, it's going to be, pretty wild. Mike says if KOC is willing to commit to pounding the rock and playing defense, then Kyler could be a better fit than Darnold, given that Darnold's a turnover machine. Yeah, I mean, Darnold actually has higher turnover rates than Kyler. Kyler has, thrown underneath a lot, and that's certainly part of it. And Darnold had a higher sack rate when he was here. It's something that I discovered, and I wanted to do more of an entire podcast about this some point, but it kind of got away with for me in the summer. I was really trying to investigate how it was that the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl, like what they did on offense, what they did on defense, what statistical markers. And something I noticed, I wonder if Teasley brings this idea over or if KOC has taken note of this as well, that running on second down is not a good idea by expected points added. And if you have like Matthew Stafford or Drake May or, any of the best quarterbacks in the league, you would be psycho to run on second down and more than like 5 yards, just Looney Tunes. If you have Josh Allen, right? Because you're setting yourself up for third down and medium or third down and long over and over again. But the Seattle Seahawks actually did it a lot. And one of the reasons probably was that they were winning. But another reason was that Sam Darnold rarely had to throw out of third and long. So he converted third and less than 4, like 2/3 of the time. Plus teams go for fourth downs all the time now. And I think what Seattle wanted to do was, when Sam Darnold is at his worst oftentimes is when he's trying to do too much. So they put him in a lot of positions where he didn't have to try to do too much. And so I think if you're Kevin O'Connell and you run and it's 2nd and 7, that running again and trying to set up a 3rd and 3 for a scrambling quarterback might be a good idea at times, to try to really create this environment where he does not have to deal with third and long, because that's where Murray has not been very successful in his career. And you can see why, because undersized, blitzes, pressure, all that sort of stuff, that's where he's going to try too hard to be a magic man. So if you can really mitigate the number of third and longs, then you can recreate a lot of what Seattle was able to do last year. So let's see. Greg, in the NFC North, Vikings will need all 4 quarterbacks. That's another thing I've seen often, and I just don't really fully understand like why people are predicting injuries at this point. But I also think too that it is one of the defining factors of the Minnesota Vikings fan base that you assume the worst. I mean, this happens all the time with the subjects that we kind of touch on. And I think, 50 years since going to the Super Bowl last, a lot of, tragedies along the way. Teddy Bridgewater just retired. I mean, that was probably some of the most excited the Vikings fan base has been in a really long time, when they won the division after just 1 year of Mike Zimmer, into his 2nd year of Mike Zimmer, and, building that great team and looking like you had your quarterback. So the, carpet has been pulled out from under Vikings fans many, many times. And I can't change that and tell you, and I'm certainly not going to say, all right, everybody, put away your sports trauma and, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you that. But I think that the way to look at it is, number one is, the things that have happened in the past don't dictate what's going to happen in the future. And I would also look at it as, in the NFC these days, you just have no idea how it's going to go. Everyone's crowning the Rams, and it's very possible they just go to the Super Bowl and win. Seattle's bringing back a great team. I could see them right back in the NFC Championship again. Everybody else, though, put them roster for roster. I mean, there's just a lot of teams that have a chance. So I think that, the journey of where this is going to go is very exciting, interesting. It's almost football season. We almost get real football. So I don't know, like, can we wait maybe 3 weeks? If they go 0-3, then you have every right. It's just, sometimes I feel like we jump the gun on that stuff. When people come in and say, well, what if they go 8-9 and then they pay Kyler and then they never win again? And then this and whoa. Well, what if all 4 quarterbacks get hurt and then CJ Ham has to come out of retirement to be the emergency quarterback? Okay, guys, deep breaths. Deep breaths. BM before the final slate of the worst defense in the league, and Green Bay play. Oh, yeah. McCarthy was on the short list for worst quarterbacks in NFL history. Yeah. I mean, look, the performance from last year, there's no way to sugarcoat it. There really isn't. I mean, whatever way you want to look at the stats, even with better games down the stretch, with those bad defenses, with the backups, the stats still don't bear out that he had any type of season that was promising. It's just that I'd like to see how it plays out first, and the cost is very little to keep JJ McCarthy on your team. It just depends on how they feel behind the scenes. I mean, somebody brought up, like, would you just trade him straight up for Anthony Richardson? And I think, well, it would depend on what they think. I mean, they've had now multiple coaches, Josh McCown, Wes Phillips, Kevin O'Connell, with this guy for 2 years and now an entire training camp. Now, you could say that their judgment is questionable when Sam Darnold went somewhere else, but there were economics to that decision. So if they really thought, we just can't coach him, there's nothing more there, he hasn't learned, he hasn't improved, whatever. If that's what they think, then it might just be the end. And there have been plenty of guys throughout, Paxton Lynch or Christian Ponder or EJ Manuel or, many other first round draft picks that just didn't work out. I'm just not there yet personally, but I think that, that's in the potential, like, out of all the outcomes that, he could be a Cleveland Brown in 2 weeks or something like that. I just don't think that that's something that they need to do right now. Yeah, I did see Luther Burden is also hurt. That's right. Oh man, Scott, you're really, this is one of the things that was really bizarre about this entire last few weeks, because Scott says that I'm not a reporter. I just regenerate what the Vikings PR department tells me to say. Boy, Scott, you must be new here, which I really love. I mean, I love the fact that we're getting new people here, but that's a good one. That is a good one. based on my past history of criticism for the team, for the OG listener, I mean, in 2018, were we calling it going viral yet for a complete meltdown, tearing the team apart and going, blowing up on the internet and stuff? I don't know. Look, here's the way I try to do it. Number one, like, it's literally my trade is being a reporter. It's what I do. I go to every press conference and the combine and the owners' meetings, and I follow this team around the country, chronicling everything that they do. I interview experts and former players and reporters from all the other teams, and I interview players and write about their stories and everything else. Like, literally, it's what I do, right? But I will say what confuses people sometimes is that I am unique in that I podcast every day and that I live stream. You don't see this a whole lot from reporters because I did a talk show before. So I'm kind of used to doing this, right? Of blending my opinions with my reporting. And sometimes that throws people off, I think. And I've gathered information on Kyler Murray from January, literally starting in January. I wrote a 4,000 word story where I took all sorts of different sources and put them together, a dozen different sources and put them together for a story on Murray. I went to every single practice. I tracked every single throw. And yet still I would come here and be like, no, he's biased. He doesn't, he just loves Kyler. It's like, I don't know what more I'm supposed to do. I mean, sometimes it gets a little bit perplexing of like, what more would you like from this? It has been my opinion from day one of them signing Murray that it was a good idea. It has continued to look like a good idea. So I haven't changed my opinion. But I'm sure, some of the Vikings PR people could pop in and tell you how much I've ticked them off at times throughout my career. Anyway, so that's all, I don't know, like you just try to go where the facts tell you. And, I've always, and you look at my book in the background here, Football is a Numbers Game. I've always tried to lean as heavily as I can on the facts. And the fact of the matter is that the Vikings had a performance at the quarterback position that was unacceptable in 2025. And they had every opportunity to go get Flacco, to go get Kirk, to go get Geno Smith, to go get somebody that JJ McCarthy would have had a really good chance to beat in a quarterback competition, and they didn't. And so then, watching practice every day, it looked like one guy's a starter, one guy's still developing. That's the facts. I tracked all the numbers, brought them all back here. Best you could possibly do, I thought, but not good enough for some people who still think that me thinking that the starting quarterback who's been good in the past that they signed to try to be good, who's looked pretty good in practice, is carrying the team's water. So I don't know. You can't please everybody. I do know that. Take off the Gopher hat. I love this hat. I really enjoy it. Now, I know I'm not from here, so I didn't go to Minnesota, but I really enjoy going to games for the U. Whether it's football, I've been to volleyball, men's, and no, I guess only women's hockey, and basketball, men's and women's. Yeah. So I don't get to rep the hat? If I go to the games, can I rep the hat? Hunter would like to hear your NFC playoff predictions. Ooh. Okay, so this is where it is hard because we're talking about like how many teams have a good case for it. Let me think here. Teams that I think are an absolute lock for the playoffs would be the Los Angeles Rams and Seattle Seahawks. So there's two from that division. I will go with the Carolina Panthers in the NFC South. Not by a mile, but I think maybe by the skin of their teeth because I think they have a good defense. In the NFC North, okay, let's do the East first. I think, I don't know. I think Philadelphia deserves the benefit of the doubt. There's a part of me that wants to pick the Dallas Cowboys, but maybe that's just sort of pie in the sky. But I think a new defensive coordinator, Dak is really playing great in recent years. There's a part of me that wants to go Cowboys and then Lions winning the division here in the NFC North. And the Panthers and the Rams and the Seahawks, and that leaves one wild card spot. And, maybe that one wild card spot could be the Minnesota Vikings. It is a very tough NFC, isn't it? A lot of teams that are very similar, aren't they? Jace's concerned anything about Kyler is not a vocal leader and someone to energize or coach up his teammates when they're behind in a game. I think that the Vikings roster is built with a lot of players that are that person. I just think that it has to be accepted that not every person who plays quarterback is going to be Friday Night Lights. Let's go out and win it for KOC. Even Kirk Cousins is kind of proof of this. Kirk did not have the support of his head coach for several years. And then Kevin O'Connell got behind him. And I don't know if it was more vocal Kirk. It was just a more confident Kirk, especially in some of the biggest moments. And he performed better. And then, kind of came out of his shell and everything else. And I think that, that might happen with Kyler Murray as well. That when I talked to Chase Edmonds, his former teammate, he said that team was very close in 2021 with Kyler Murray. So it's not like, and he said they used to go to dinners at his house and everything else. When you're winning, everything is usually fine. Now you're saying like at the end of games and comebacks and I don't know, throwing and running usually to me are more important. I just don't really believe in a lot of that stuff. I think that holding teammates accountable. There's something to that. Communicating is important. We will have to see Kyler communicating with his teammates, making adjustments and things like that. That I'll agree with you. But in terms of like firing people up, I think we love that. Sometimes you'll see from a coach on the sideline, I'll never see him, throw Gatorade bottles or, flip a table or something. And it's like, does that do something? I'm not sure. I think some of that stuff could be a little bit overrated. Probably a lot overrated, actually. Matt Verick, the offense looked really efficient and decisive today. Is this the point where the offense starts to balance it out? I mean, I really think that this is the part of the offseason where, yes, you should see them starting to be on the same page every day. It shouldn't be one up, one down, because the thing that happens in these early practices, and this is why I kept sort of insisting, like, I remember Kirk was tough in these, I remember Darnold was tough in these, is they're installing stuff. So it's not like they've done it. They're just putting it in, and they're often giving difficult looks from the other team or from the defensive side and so forth. And so some of it doesn't look like it's supposed to look. But now when they're doing a simulated kind of game plan, get ready for a team, and then going into the game planning phase once the fans are gone and the joint practices, that's where it should look good. When you get into those types of parts, it should look pretty good. Dave, do you think the decision of QB1 will benefit the snapping operation? I hope so. Boy, I mean, I'm with you on that. I don't know. It has been a little wobbly and a little wonky with Blake Brandel in there. Could it be a problem in the season? Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it could be. And it was a little bit last year with, Kyler, he's not as tall as Carson Wentz, but even Carson Wentz had one fly over his head. Carson Wentz had to grab a couple from low or from outside, and it's something that Brandel's got to be very precise on and should be considered a pretty major concern. I also think that the interior offensive line, the backups having no experience, is also a concern for me as well. Juergens has barely played. Huber has barely played. Bird has never played. And these guys right now are next man up if somebody on the interior should go down. Let's see. Purple Kool-Aid said thought that Wiggins and Cat would lead the Wolves to sustain success for 10 years. Sometimes you miss on a pick. It does happen. And, we don't have to treat either side of it. You don't have to treat the people who were skeptical like, how dare you? And you don't have to treat the people who are enthusiastic like you're foolish. It's a sport that's made for sharing opinions and having discussion. And when it goes really well, and I think tonight is going really well, that it's great, right? It's awesome to have a great football conversation with somebody. It's really frustrating when it's more about like making it personal, right? And that's where, I think this crossed the line a little bit. It used to do that with Kirk. It's like, making it personal about, me or whatever. It's like, really, I'm here to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, not myself. And I'll explain any opinion I've ever had. I mean, I sit here for 2-3 hours sometimes. I am happy to explain why I thought something, what my process was, or whatever else. And if you don't respect it, then, you don't have to hang around here. It's okay. But, sometimes it becomes in the comment section, everything else like, oh, you want this, you want that. Or here's what I want. I want to have great discussion, conversations. I want to have a really fun season with you guys talking about it, reporting on it, and everything else. Like, that's what I want. And world peace and good pizza. Those are things that I want, right? I owe Raggets a sandwich. Yeah, I know. Dane put a milkshake on it and got closer than me. Did not have a milkshake with Raggets. So, but Will, yep. Maybe I'll get Will some something at the Twins game or something. He's a big Twins guy. Let's see. Oh boy, you guys are funny. Well, let's see. Steven, Josh Rosen was traded for a second and future fifth. I wondered what type of haul McCarthy could bring. Well, I don't think it's that. I think that was a really special circumstance with Josh Rosen that, Miami was super desperate to try to find their future quarterback. And I think the teams have gotten way better at distributing their draft capital. But, Darnold was also traded for a second round pick too. I just don't know that anyone's doing that. I think they've realized that second round picks are worth their weight in gold. They often turn into starting players, and they're very cheap in terms of their contracts. So you're usually not trading away second round draft picks. I would be very, very surprised if it was that. I would put it at the same as Trey Lance. I would put it as a fourth. And the other thing with Rosen was the Cardinals were horrible. Their coaching was horrible. Like, that's the difference is people around the NFL, and I know some of you don't love this, but it is true. And I go to the combine and I go to the owners' meetings and I talk to people, and a lot of people really respect the Minnesota Vikings organization and KOC. There's just a lot of respect for him. And you might say, hey, maybe those people don't know the shortcomings and everything else. But around the league, there is a lot of respect for O'Connell, which I think means that if they look at this situation and say, well, you couldn't make it with O'Connell, you couldn't make it with Jefferson. This isn't like the Arizona Cardinals. It's not like failing for the Cleveland Browns, right? It's going to be looked at like failing for the 49ers, where it's not going to come along with as much of a draft capital return. So I would look at it as fourth. And is that worth it? Fourths are often special teams players. I'm not so sure that I would think that was going to be worth it. Steven, what do you see as the strongest and weakest position rooms, and why? I think the strongest room is the linebackers. If Jamal Adams could play linebacker, but even like Ivan Pace gets forgotten, and I understand why, because he did not perform at the level that he did as a rookie, but that's a pretty good backup to have with a lot of experience, and he knows the defense inside and out. And Eric Wilson has looked great in this camp. He had a pick today on a throw from JJ McCarthy. He was blitzing the other night. It just looked great. Blake Cashman has looked great in this camp, as you'd expect. He's a star player, but those two guys rocking and rolling together. Jake Golday, who has also really impressed me with his movement skill and the fact that he's been able to pick up this defense. So I think that linebacker group is super deep and really good. The concern right now would be, I think, the safeties. I mean, Jamal Adams is playing a lot of safety, which I think should make you a little bit nervous. Josh Metellus doing something totally new. Theo Jackson had a decent year last year at times, and then at other times they were playing Jay Ward, who's out there as well. I mean, that's a group that just doesn't have one of those stalwart players at that spot. Like Metellus has been that in the box before, and he's been a stalwart type player as a hybrid, but has not had to play this kind of style. So I think that would be the answer. Reminder of the FanDuel question of the day, and I might as well tell you about our sponsor again. FanDuel question of the day was 1 to 10 scale. Confidence the Vikings can make the postseason. They are plus 148 to make the playoffs. Oh, I should look at that actually. Since we were talking about the NFC playoffs, let me see the odds. So I just gave you my off the top of the dome type of thoughts, but the odds, the Rams minus 550. So if the playoffs worked out just the way the odds have them, the Rams minus 550 are the favorites to make the playoffs, and Seattle. So that would be two teams in the NFC West. It has Detroit as the third highest odds to make the playoffs in the NFC, which really shows you how tight it is because Detroit's got problems. And so they would be winning the NFC North. The Eagles minus 166 would be winning the NFC East. And then the 49ers at minus 136. So three teams from the NFC West. And then that would mean the Tampa Bay Bucks winning the NFC South. So yeah, this would leave out a lot of good teams if it went the way that the markets have it. But I mean, that just shows you how much up in the air it is. Anyway, so 1 to 10 scale. That's what the FanDuel question of the day is. Also, want to remind you about my friends at Brooklyn Bedding. It has been a great 2026 for me sleep-wise because of my new mattress, the Aurora Luxe from Brooklyn Bedding. Their mattresses are just so well crafted. It feels intentional. It feels solid, not disposable foam. They're selling all sorts of different mattresses out there, but this one to me is as good as it gets. And they're not just a sponsor. I really have this mattress and it's outstanding. I can relax. Even if it's a tense show or whatever, and even if I do have some back soreness, it's made my spine feel so much better. And they offer mattresses for everyone, every sleep style, and even in the hard to find sizes. So we were able to get exactly what we want. But if we didn't, then you've got a 120-night comfort trial. So if you aren't happy, you could swap it or return the mattress hassle-free. So go to brooklynbedding.com and use my promo code PURPLE at checkout for 30% off site-wide. 30% is a lot, my friends, for their back-to-school sale. brooklynbedding.com, 30% off with the code PURPLE. All right, circle back to your questions here. Bathroom remodel says, if Kyler goes 4-4, he will lose his job. I mean, everything is, I don't think that's true, but everything is contextualized when we try to make statements like that, where it's like, if they're 4-4 and have the 12th best offense in the league and they lost on 3 fumbles or something. I mean, that was 2023 where they were 4-4 and it was fumbles, and remember Jefferson fumbling out of the back of the end zone and all sorts of things that went wrong in those first couple games, the ball bouncing off of Caleb Evans' face. I mean, if it goes that way, then I don't think you're changing quarterbacks. If they are 26th in the league in offense and Flores' defense has won them a handful of games, you might be looking at that. Yeah, and that would be a reason not to trade J.J. McCarthy, is that there are scenarios here where it doesn't work out and you have to make a move. I would be, pretty surprised if that was the case, but it could definitely happen. The Bronze Solo says, not the quarterback battle, it's the fact that they haven't continued development in a drafted quarterback in their 3rd season since Dante, not Tavares Jackson, Ponder, Teddy. Well, Teddy. I mean, they would have with Teddy or J.J. McCarthy. I mean, it's fair, but you can't bring him up. He was their starting quarterback locked in. Tavares Jackson here's the trouble though. When you mention those quarterbacks, they all kind of look the same, where this offseason, I was doing my project to go back and look for the most underrated players of the last 50 years. And one of the reasons I landed on Ben Lieber is because I watched a lot of that era of Vikings football with Tavares Jackson. Did you want them to keep going with that? And the same thing with Christian Ponder. No, they haven't gotten into 3rd and 4th years of development, but you just couldn't. And that's the same problem they ran into here, is you just couldn't keep going forward with this unless McCarthy came into this camp and totally blew you away. Because look at what happened last year. You had a good enough defense to seriously compete for a Super Bowl. If you had good enough receivers, the offensive line, when it was healthy, you did. It was not often healthy, but when it was, it was. I mean, you weren't able to do it. Like the game against Detroit, the game against the Dallas Cowboys, those are top offenses that they were able to shut down defensively. Just get enough from the quarterback position and you're a serious contender, and they weren't able to do it. So you're telling, this coaching staff to, hey, forget all that. Forget all these players that you have that are good and this great coach that you have on the defensive side. We need to develop this guy for another year. It's just not realistic. And you could say, well, that's the reason that they've never had a starting quarterback that's, been young. But a lot of the starting quarterbacks that from the draft that same year, whether it's Knicks, who was 16th, or the top 3, they've already accomplished a lot. It often does happen pretty quickly. When I looked up all the numbers on the first 10 starts for a lot of quarterbacks, there's at least signs there for most of them, unless they were a top 5 pick and went to a horrific team, which of course he did not. So I don't think that's the cause of them not having a long-term quarterback. I think in one way it's luck. I mean, missing on these quarterbacks and having Teddy go sideways that's bad luck in a lot of ways. But also look where they were drafted and look where Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels were drafted. This is not a time to tank. This was the right plan to build around the rookie quarterback advantage, which you still have, by the way, since Kyler is the cheapest quarterback on the roster, which is crazy. So you still have that. And they still have a very good roster and a lot of younger players who have made noise in this training camp. So it's there to have this window come to an end. But then, what happens after that, that we don't know. But how are you going to get to the point where you can draft the top quarterback in the draft, which is how a lot of teams have turned themselves around? It's usually either getting a successful quarterback from somebody else or drafting high. It's not often that it's drafting the 5th best quarterback that gets you there. Not that McCarthy couldn't have worked out. Lamar Jackson was the 5th best quarterback. Nix was the 6th. The odds were, though, that somebody wasn't going to work out. And the fact that 4 out of the 6 have is actually impressive, I think. Caleb says, as a fan, I did not see improvement. Looked like last year. So a coach, I'm sure, did not see improvement if the fans did not. That's how I felt, Caleb. And I don't mean to say that there's none, because I think the coaches would understand how plays were being read or reads were being seen out there on the field. They would understand a lot better than me what exactly was going into each play. But from a results angle, that's where I was not seeing much progress, how erratic it was from one day to the next, from one drill to the next. And since the night practice became the Super Bowl of practices to some people, that was a really good example. I mean, when I added up the numbers, I thought, chat's not going to like this, because it was just so many negative throws that in a row after such a great start. And that's where experience, I think, ultimately can even this out for JJ McCarthy. But when you're going into a season like this with a team like this, you just can't really rely on the consistency yet. And that's why you have to go in this direction. So, and you're right. Is the faithful. We did see a lot of this in camp last year with McCarthy. We did, where there were these up days and down days and inconsistencies and all those things, but we were in a different spot. So we were saying, well, okay, I mean, but that happens, right? He's young. It's all right. Like, he'll get him tomorrow. And oftentimes he would. But now we changed the standard, right? I wasn't doing positive, negative throws. I wasn't even tracking numbers with McCarthy last year, because I thought, well, he's the starting quarterback. He's settled. So I'm just going to kind of go by vibe and feel. And I think now I've realized why so many reporters around the league do track some of these numbers, because vibes and feel don't always tell you the exact right of what happened. And I probably just undervalued the negative throws. So I remember he was in a 7-on-7 with the Patriots and completed, a number of them, and then airmailed one for a just awful interception. And it was like, oh, well, he's just one bad throw. It was a good drill. And it's like, now that we're kind of back to a veteran starter, it's like, yeah, the level of precision and the level of like protecting the football and accuracy that's required is pretty high. And it's not quite there yet, I think. And it wasn't last year. And I don't know how much better it truly got in these first few days. But he's going to have a lot to improve on as we go forward and have a chance, I think. Yeah, is the faithful. I know. I also saw people saying that they would no longer be Vikings fans, which, look, if you're a Viking fan, you're a Viking fan for life. You know this. I know this, that these are some of the most loyal people to put yourself through everything you've gone through. Keep coming back. That. Like, people are just trying to sort of one up everybody else on the internet. And I've tried to be, very not try to over address the loudest 5% or whatever, but sometimes you have to. Mark says you're an O'Connell apologist. You're worried about losing access. Therefore, rather than criticize O'Connell, for whom a lot of criticized is deserved for the way he handled McCarthy last year. So number one, I'm a member of the Pro Football Writers Association, and which is great, which is with hundreds of other NFL writers. And in the league's bylaws, it says that you cannot take away someone's access for being critical. So that's number one. I can name you about 50 things I've criticized Kevin O'Connell for over the last 4 years. Everything from trick plays to too complicated offense to not running with Jordan Mason at the right time to, 4th and 8 play call that Kirk Cousins checked down on to whatever a number of other things that we've had to go through with Kevin O'Connell. But also what happens sometimes is that sometimes you guys want me to be enraged by something, and that just doesn't happen very often. That's why the rants are so special, is that then that's when I, go over the top. But I look at it as with Kevin O'Connell that he has accomplished some things in this league that we don't see a lot. 13 and 14 win seasons with 2 different quarterbacks. You don't see that a ton. He's had an offensive player of the year for Justin Jefferson. You don't see that a lot. He has had the biggest, largest comeback in NFL history. You don't see that in a lot, right? So there's a lot of things that have happened. NFLPA survey, A grades, free agents that flock here. The top quarterback free agent came here. Remember, his name is Kyler Murray. That there were other teams that wanted Sam Darnold. He came here for Kevin O'Connell. Like, these are things that we have to acknowledge, while also saying that to this point, O'Connell not winning playoff games puts him in the spotlight, and that in both of those playoff games, the Vikings were outcoached, which is a problem. And if it happens again, you're going to start asking that question of, like, all right, are you going to be able to get to where you want to be? But I think that when you start to add it up, that you have a coach that you could believe would design a fair quarterback competition for JJ McCarthy. And last year, putting McCarthy in the position that they did was unfair to McCarthy and wasn't the right decision for the Vikings. We know that now. And I wondered about it then. And I wondered if they believed in themselves too much when it came to putting JJ McCarthy in. You want to hear my biggest criticism of Kevin O'Connell? I've given it to you a dozen times over the last year, which is that they believed way too much in their own ability to develop JJ McCarthy and have him ready to come in to start the 2025 season with so much pressure that once you start to believe it's you find out pretty quick it's not. Because just like the old saying, the Jimmies and Joes, or it's the players, not the plays, or whatever other way you put it. I mean, yeah, that's to me letting go Sam Darnold and not, flip it over a table, much less standing on top of it for him to stay after his season was something that I didn't love it when it happened and have been critical the entire time. But you know what you do? I think when you're a professional journalist and not just some schmo on the internet is you be fair and you cover it all. And that's the main thing. So a lot of times what I tend to find is when I'm fair, then I'm a shill. This is why we use the facts though for this show, because the facts are the facts. They've had a lot of good things happen since Kevin O'Connell has been here, and they've got a lot of buy-in from the ownership with his culture. And it seems like belief from Nolan Teasley to want to come here when he was for sure going to have GM offers next year. But we work through all the facts with Kevin O'Connell. And do I think that he mishandled JJ McCarthy? I truly do not, except for putting him in that position to take over a 14-win team when he wasn't ready. And that was an organizational decision, but Kevin O'Connell has to wear that. And so I think that was wrong. But do I think that he designed the wrong offense? Do I think he taught him to throw the football wrong? Do I think it was too complicated to do this or do that? No, I really don't. I think that they did everything they could coming out of the bye week to simplify the offense, but then they couldn't even get a snap cadence out the correct way. I mean, yeah, I think that there's issues with the complexity sometimes, but I don't think that anything that they could have done would have made accuracy be consistent and timing and anticipation and the things that you have to play starting quarterback. It's an interesting question. You don't have to phrase it in such an attacking way toward me. You could just say, hey, Matt, do you think that O'Connell maybe developed wrongly JJ McCarthy? Do you think he made mistakes? And I would say, I'm sure, yeah, there was some along the way. Do I think it would have changed? Do I think there was something he could have done to change where we are right now? I don't. You could just ask nicely. It's so much better that way, isn't it? Let's see. Oak Dog says it's hard to justify KOC anything more than an average to above average head coach would not call him top 5. No, I mean, you don't get top 5 until you win the playoffs. Absolutely not. You don't get top 5 until you win in the playoffs. That is absolutely the case. Cody says, always thought that you insert vets and build around rookies. Did we mess up by inserting McCarthy into an already established scheme and players? The vets have been good there. Why not the rookie? No, I don't know that they messed up by putting him in with a good environment. I think that a lot of the successful quarterbacks have landed in good environments. Like when we look at Brock Purdy, when we look at Jalen Hurts, when we look at Jordan Love, those guys, I don't know how they do with the Cleveland Browns. Right? Like there are a lot of quarterbacks that are not environment proof. Patrick Mahomes might have been environment proof, but I don't think it hurt that he ended up with Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs to start his career. But, having veterans around you and it makes me think of sort of the Lynx and Olivia Miles, where it's all veterans and it's really helped. I think that does really help. But what I don't think helped with McCarthy is the amount of pressure that came along with the situation. And, we asked at different times last year, like, you're taking over this team that's got very high expectations, and how's that, going to weigh on you? It's very easy to say, oh yeah, I'll be fine, until you're actually in it and everyone's looking around at you going, dude, that Baltimore game, we needed that one, and you overthrew a bunch of people, and what the heck, because we're supposed to be in the playoffs and our defense is right. And I know they're not saying it directly, and they were very good teammates to him in the locker room last year from everything that we heard from the players, and they still support him. That's very clear that they still support, JJ McCarthy and his development and everything else. But, you feel that regardless. You feel that you're letting everybody down. And I think that was a hard position to be in. At the same time, think about any of the quarterbacks who came in his class. Like Nix had that pressure, but Nix was already 24 years old, 25 years old. How many other quarterbacks had that pressure? Penix got to sit behind Kirk Cousins, and it was the other guys, 1, 2, and 3 draft pick. It was, hey, just be halfway decent and we're going to really love you. Just show us something right away and we're going to think this is great, right? He was the one that came in with the most challenging expectations. And I do think that mattered to some extent. I do think also that when you have all those players, that you're dialing up an offense to maximize all those players, which means a lot on the quarterback. If you've ever seen the video of Drew Brees talking about how a play is broken down, just the play, one single play out of hundreds, you think, oh my gosh, there is so much going on in the quarterback's head that he has to remember and navigate. And that's not easy to do. So, I think that it was pretty challenging for him right away with all the veterans and the coach that he has and everything else. Do agree. BM said at the end of the day, his team needs to win a playoff game this year. We need to see forward momentum. I do agree with that. Thank you, said Dana or Danak. Can't really tell where the first name starts and the last name ends, but thank you very much. I appreciate that. No, I appreciate all the audience. Look, there are always going to be some folks that are not pleased with what you do, and that's why I try to focus on the legitimate questions and everything else most of the time. But this did become a little bit bigger of a thing, and I think we all saw that, of the media is not telling you the real truth, and they're protecting this, and they're trying to cover for that and everything else. It's like, if JJ won the thing, then I would be saying, hey, wow, right? Like, this is really good for this team that he won the quarterback competition against a very good quarterback. And is this back on? Like, how exciting is this? How interesting is this? That's what I would have been saying. It just wasn't reality. And that's what I do here, is focus on the reality and the facts and everything else. Mike, the 14-win season with Sam was actually a 10 or 11-win team with a super weak schedule. I think that everybody that year had a field day with a couple of divisions that the Vikings played against. And you might be right that maybe it was more like an 11-win team if it had played an even schedule. But I also remember some pretty darn good victories that year as well. They also played week 17 and dismantled the Green Bay Packers and took them down at Lambeau. And, they had a lot of good victories that year. I don't think it was just completely getting fat off of bad teams in 2024. But, it wasn't one of the hardest schedules I've ever seen in my life, but I don't think it was totally schedule driven. That was a particular weird year though, because you had all these teams with like 14, 15 wins, and then all these other teams with like 3 or 4. And that doesn't happen that often. Last year, there was a ton of parity. So that could change things. But either way, whether you call it they're really an 11-win team, a 14-win team, it was a good team. It just was not quite as good as the Los Angeles Rams or, some other teams in the NFL. Scamping around says, golly, I'm excited to see Jets pop off. If it looks like, and this is the thing about the quarterback competition, is in camp, Jefferson and Murray have connected well. And Jefferson has done everything he can in front of any microphone to say, hey, love both these quarterbacks. I'm a great teammate. He's always going to be. But there's been a few moments where he gets up after catching a pass where it's like, yep, that's it. That's it. That's the one. So Hans, little birdie tells me that Drake Lindsay will be on the Vikings fans' minds. That's a funny reference. And hey, here I am wearing the Gophers hat tonight. Really, the Nike hat was just covered in sweat, and I have two of them, and I couldn't find the other one. So I just got this one the other day because I like the logo and everything else. But I'll be watching a lot of Drake Lindsay. I heard that he saw somewhere, Pioneer Press maybe, that he had like slimmed down a little bit, ready to go. I think he's a quality player. Is the Faithful says, I don't know, Matthew, after the Lions OC left the Lions, looked lost against the Vikings defense last year. They did, yeah. And they have a new offensive coordinator who nearly beat the Vikings with Arizona, Drew Petzing. I don't know how that's going to go, though. They have questions on the offensive line, which really raises an eyebrow for me. That's always the question. Scott, if I could ask Fran Tarkenton one question, what would you ask? That's a interesting one. Well, and Fran, I see him make social media videos every once in a while, which is really crazy. Fran is probably the most underappreciated all-time great quarterback. When he retired, he had all these passing records, everything else. And because of the Purple People Eaters, I don't know that he was always given quite the credit, and because of the way that he played, which is funny because I think that some of you who watched Fran Tarkenton back in his day will watch Kyler Murray and be like, hey, haven't seen that in a long time. I think I would ask Fran Tarkenton what it was like to get hit back then. What it was like the pads were so different. The rules were so different. Just what was it like to go out there and truly, be a punching bag at quarterback? Like, how did he survive it? How did he adjust his game in a way that he could play? Because he was very healthy throughout his career. That's probably one. And I think the hardest question for that would be, how do you kind of deal with getting over losing a Super Bowl? Yeah, that had to be really hard too for Fran Tarkenton, but fascinating dude. Great all-time quarterback. This team's historic players list is ridiculous. Oak Dog, what's your opinion on McCarthy taking himself out of the Packers game? Am I wrong to be bothered by that? Seemed pretty immature. Yeah, we talked about it when it happened. I think that a lot of it had to do with how it happened, not that it happened, right? That it was come out there for a series and then just pull yourself out and then you put a towel over it. And I remember Lieber saying like, dude, it's not mangled. Like, what are we doing here? And, the high five thing is great, but when you're not playing, you really shouldn't be just like doing the kind of Friday Night Lightsy sort of stuff. It was a little bit, it's not like I was offended by it. It was a little bit like just some evidence of not fully getting it. And I don't know if you can teach somebody to get it or not. I haven't observed a whole lot from McCarthy. He still high fives people, but his attitude and his energy have been appreciated by the team overall and how much he loves his teammates, loves his game. And I know that because they've told us that before, but there are times where that game, as meaningless as it was of a game, it just getting the penalty, the way he took himself out of the game, like those things, it was a little bit like Anthony Richardson pulling himself out of the game where you go, that's just not how this is done in the pros, dude. You don't just sort of go to the sideline, or in this case, you don't just like put a towel over your hand. Like, you should be getting treatment or whatever it is that you should be doing with that and not that. So I think that there is something, and you've all probably worked with someone who's like this, who maybe not in any way like a bad person or anything, but maybe just doesn't get it all the time. And there's some of that with him that I think that with time, you could definitely get there. Is this Ditcher Dirk? I appreciate the compliment. Thank you very much. Mike, the fan base is obsessed with Jefferson's stats, rather win than try to keep a wide receiver who hasn't performed in the most important games happy. Mike, sometimes, I don't understand the aggressiveness with some of these takes. I mean, I get what you're saying with like stats are not the most important thing, but at any time during Justin Jefferson's career, when the offense is working at its best, that means Justin Jefferson is succeeding. It's the thing that tells you whether the offense is working or not, is how Justin Jefferson is doing, because it's built around him. This is not about keeping him happy. It's about that's how you win games, is by throwing it to the best receiver you have. In my opinion, still top 3 in the NFL. Maybe some people after last year will disagree with that, but I think that's how you win games, is throwing it to your best players, isn't it? So I don't think it's more about the stats. Has a quarterback won a Super Bowl under 6 feet tall? You can use Google to find that out, right? Russell Wilson? Is Jalen Hurts 6 feet? Maybe. Maybe Jalen Hurts is 6 feet. How tall is Drew Brees? I don't know. I see that one sometimes. Everything you say, this is, whenever someone says you can't, this is what I hated about the Jalen Brunson take. Remember Becky Hammond said you can't win with a player that small. Anytime I hear you can't do this with this, you just can't win with a scrambling quarterback. And then a scrambling quarterback wins and it's like, well, you can't win with a short one. It's like, okay. Like you can't win this way. You can't win that way. It's like, okay, I don't know. Players come in all sorts of shapes or sizes. This guy's played a lot of NFL games before, and there are issues regarding the height that come up on tape sometimes, but saying someone who's short can't win, obviously